Programming here is laying down the different steps and action points in a general community-based development program. Here we integrate the different steps in community organizing with the community processes. We start with the integration or immersion, or understanding the community from a first-person point of view. After social investigation, the community organizers would conduct groundworking and conscientization to stimulate critical thinking amongst a group of community members. Developing the local leaders and forming an organization sets up more organized action inside the community. Participatory action research allows community members to gather data, analyze information, and generate knowledge. This will involve various participatory tools to allow the community to analyze risks, community or livelihood assets, and the transformative structures and processes in the community. Power and gender analysis tools are incorporated to stimulate critical thinking. Access to external knowledge and analysis is facilitated to supplement the participatory action research. Participatory planning is then conducted based on the findings of the participatory research. This can lead to various action points or strategies based on the vision and strategies of the community. This includes strategies to enhance self-organizing, capacity building, collective action towards natural resource management, disaster risk reduction, community health, enterprise generation, etc. Advocacy and campaigns to influence community governance structures, and networking and partnering with other stakeholders and like-minded groups. In the spirit of reflection, action, and reflection, participatory monitoring and evaluation and learning are conducted during and after implementation of various uh, activities. Let's make a quick pass of some lessons that have been learned from the lens of sustainable livelihoods and resilience. Integration is often disregarded or assumed, especially for time-constrained projects. However, it promotes sense-making, or the discipline where people develop frameworks from data and dialogues. Draw the map while you explore. We develop community leaders and form community organizations because we realize that capital assets can only be put into play through appropriate institutions to be sustainable. There's always that pressure to streamline community organizations. However, this does not necessarily result to resilient organizations. By streamlining, you try to remove as much as possible all redundancies and buffers. Redundancy is appreciated only when the system collapses. During the participatory action research, we try to analyze the change, analyze its nature, and anticipate its implications. Is it a rapid reversible change, or is it a slow, irreversible change? In the research process, we often skip the power and gender analysis, often because it is either assumed or because there's too much focus on delivering services. But delivering service is a given. Gender goes beyond access and control of resources or roles and responsibilities. The key challenge is transforming power relationships in the community. By accessing external analysis, we reduce unknowns and uncertainty. By doing so, we acknowledge that no one has a monopoly of knowledge and that partnerships are necessary to gain knowledge power. We also recognize that there is knowledge beyond the experience of the community. Allow the community to access, process, and critically analyze this external knowledge and then let it feed into their own planning processes. In participatory planning, we have to ask resilience to what? Define if you will build resilience or break resilience. Invest or disinvest in capitals that stabilize the current system. Response diversity, exercise scenario building, have many solutions for the same problem. Have contingency plans. Where there are multiple hazards, you may consider having scenario based contingency plans instead of hazard specific contingencies. In resilience planning, increasing adaptability to specific or regular shocks may reduce general resilience to unknown shocks. Moreover, increased adaptability in one place can reduce resilience or adaptability in another. When adaptation leads to increased efficiency in resource use, there is that possibility of a loss of general response diversity. Never forget the strategy to organize the community. Organize communities to recognize their inherent power, catalyze, facilitate, conscientize. In capacity development, calculate the risk and introduce appropriate buffers. Introduce redundancy for critical roles and resources, such as generate savings, a pool of skilled personnel, multiple sources for critical resources, stockpiles, reserve resources. Also, take note that in the recovery phase, guidance is needed. Small but influential input can be entrenched and guide subsequent evolution of the system. Collective action is necessary to develop the power width of the community. However, remember that excessive subsidization of community organizations can reduce the capacity to self organize and stifle collective action. Panarchy is a concept in resilience that recognizes that the adaptive cycle occurs in different levels and scales. At higher levels, memory and learning from higher scales can influence and renew lower scales, thus suppressing new trajectories in lower scales. On the other hand, in the lower levels, revolts occur when lower levels are synchronized or tightly interconnected. Here it's popular the Bibinka model, wherein multiple modes and level of reorganization is possible. Maintenance and resources and cross-level management can increase probability of desired change. For networking and partnering, remember that multi-stakeholder platforms is not the starting point, especially if the community has not been empowered or its capacities have not yet been built. Without empowering the vulnerable sectors, it will only sharpen the existing skewed power dynamics in the community. The multidisciplinary challenge in the community can be addressed not only by generalists, but also through partnering. Develop bonding networks, build alliances, and share resources with like minded sectors. Reinforce collective power before engaging in multi stakeholder platforms to prevent reinforcement of skewed power dynamics. Spread the risk, but also consider bridging networks. Recognize that nobody has a monopoly of the truth. Be critical, but open to dialogue with non like minded sectors. This promotes learning within the community. Too many are fixated with best practices or the latest technology and innovation to solve the complex problems. If we recognize change and complexity, we recognize that problems change and emerge. Instead, strive for adaptability, not just adaptation, not innovation and technology, but the capacity to innovate. That is where we should invest our our resources in. Do not be afraid to pilot or experiment with different strategies. However, in piloting, be conscious of gathering, documenting, and sharing lessons of pilots. To promote learning, conduct safe to fail exercises rather than fail safe initiatives. Any questions?